Please, Lisa. I know I was wrong. Just give me one more chance. I promise I'll make it up to you and our daughter. 4 years after betraying Lisa, tricking her into taking out a $300,000 loan against her own home, and disappearing with the money, Kenyon was back. Not because he was sorry. He had come back after getting a whiff of the successful business built by the very wife he had once left buried in debt. Lisa looked at the man kneeling in front of her, begging for forgiveness. But to her, Kenyon was nothing more than a stranger now. Whatever they had between them had ended the day he walked away 4 years ago. 5 years after buying her home, Lisa sat at the kitchen table early one morning with her laptop open in front of her. She had checked the number twice before clicking the button, even though she already knew exactly how much was left. When the payment went through, she refreshed the page and stared at the balance. $0. Lisa brought her hands together and looked up. Mom, Dad, it's finally mine. I have a home of my own now. You don't have to worry about me anymore. She stayed there for a few seconds, smiling at the ceiling. Lisa had bought the house when she was 22, not long after losing both of her parents. Most of the money they left her had gone into the purchase, leaving only a smaller mortgage that she and Kenyon spent the next 5 years paying off. In that time, the house had become the center of the family they built together. It was where Lisa had brought Mina home after she was born. It was also home to Theresa, the woman who had cared for Lisa since she was a child. Theresa had worked for Lisa's parents for years and had lived with the family long before Lisa bought this house. When Lisa lost both of her parents, Theresa stayed. She later moved into the new home with Lisa and, after Mina was born, helped care for her too. And now, for the first time since Lisa had signed the papers at 22, no bank had a claim on the house. Kenyon came into the kitchen, dressed for work, and found Lisa still sitting in front of the laptop. She turned the screen toward him. We did it. He looked at the zero balance, then back at her. That's it? That's it. Kenyon broke into a smile and pulled her out of the chair. 5 years, Lisa laughed as he wrapped his arms around her. 5 long years, from the other side of the kitchen. Theresa asked what was going on. Mina, hearing the excitement, ran over before either of them could answer. Lisa picked up her 3-year-old daughter and told them the house was finally paid off. Kenyon said they were celebrating that night. That evening, the 4 of them ate together in the large kitchen that had become the busiest room in the house. Theresa had cooked more food than they could finish, and Mina spent most of dinner moving between her chair and the adults around her. The house had cost about $360,000 when Lisa bought it 5 years earlier. Since then, property values in the area had risen, and similar homes were now selling for around $510,000. But Lisa had never thought of the house as something she might sell. It was the last major thing her parents had helped give her, and after 5 years of payments, it finally belonged to her family without another debt attached to it. Kenyon raised his glass. To never making another mortgage payment, Lisa smiled and lifted hers. I can drink to that, Theresa laughed, and even Mina lifted her cup because everyone else had. Nothing about Kenyon that night gave Lisa a reason to question him. He had been a caring husband throughout their marriage, a present father to Mina, and a man Theresa trusted inside the home. He worked hard, came home regularly, bought Lisa gifts without needing an occasion, and had spent 5 years helping her pay off the house. When dinner was over, Kenyon helped clear the table while Theresa took Mina upstairs to get ready for bed. Lisa stood at the sink beside him, still pleased by how strange it felt to know the payment they had made that morning would be the last. For the first time in 5 years, the house carried no debt at all. A few days after the celebration, Kenyon came home carrying a folder. He waited until after dinner, when Mina was with Theresa, before sitting down with Lisa and placing the documents in front of her. He told her he had been working on an opportunity connected to the industry he already knew. After years in sales, dealing with contractors and learning how the business operated, he believed he was ready to build something of his own. Lisa opened the folder. Kenyon had prepared a detailed plan. It included the cost of acquiring the business, operating expenses, projected revenue, existing customers he believed could be retained, and an estimate of how long it would take before the investment began paying for itself. Lisa read through the first pages while Kenyon explained. The plan was ambitious, but it did not look careless. Kenyon knew the industry. He knew the customers. He knew how the company made money. Then Lisa reached the amount he needed. $300,000. She looked up from the page. Where are you going to get $300,000? Kenyon did not answer right away. Lisa already knew before he said it. The house? We have enough equity now. We just finished paying it off. I know. Lisa closed the folder. Kenyon did not ask her to decide that night. He told her to read everything first. He said he understood what the house meant to her and would not move forward unless she believed in the plan too. Lisa kept the documents. She had spent 5 years getting rid of the last debt attached to her home. A few days later, she was being asked to put $300,000 back against it. She told Kenyon she needed time to think. Lisa spent the next 2 days going through Kenyon's plan whenever she had time. She read it after work, checked the numbers again after Mina had gone to bed, and returned to the sections that carried the most risk. The more she read, the harder it became to dismiss the idea. Kenyon had not handed her a few pages filled with promises. The plan was detailed, and much of it was built around an industry he had worked in for years. But every time Lisa began to see why it might work, she remembered what stood behind the loan. The house had been debt-free for less than a week. Kenyon did not pressure her. When Lisa asked questions, he answered them. When she said she wanted another day, he told her to take it. In front of her, he remained as relaxed as he could. But once Lisa went to bed, Kenyon stayed awake for hours. By the following morning, the lack of sleep showed on his face. Lisa noticed it while they were getting ready for work. "Did you sleep at all last night?" Kenyon gave a tired smile. "Not much. Because of the business? There's a lot riding on it." The answer made sense. Lisa was deciding whether to trust him with $300,000, and Kenyon was waiting to find out whether the plan he had spent so much time preparing would ever move forward. She left for work with the documents still unsigned. That evening, Kenyon sat across from Lisa at the dinner table. The folder was nowhere in sight. Lisa had said little since he came home, and her expression gave him nothing. Kenyon tried to eat, but each time he looked up, Lisa was watching him. He lowered his eyes to his plate. Lisa put down her fork. "Kenyon!" He looked up. "Yeah?" She held his gaze without speaking. Kenyon shifted in his chair. "What is it?" Lisa kept the serious expression for another second, then smiled. "I signed it." Kenyon stared at her. "You did? This afternoon?" He let out a long breath and leaned back in his chair. "You scared me," Lisa laughed. "Why? Did you think I found something wrong with it?" "No. I just didn't know what you were going to say." Lisa told him she had read the plan more than once. She still knew there was risk, and putting the house behind a $300,000 loan frightened her. But she also knew how long Kenyon had worked in the industry and how much he understood about it. "I believe in you," she said. Kenyon reached across the table and took her hand. "You won't regret it," Lisa believed him. After the loan process was completed, Kenyon came home with another surprise. He told Lisa he had booked a 3-day, 2-night trip for her, Theresa, and Mina. Lisa thought he was joking at first. "What about you? I can't go. Then why would we go without you?" Kenyon told her there were still things he needed to handle for work and several steps connected to the new business that could not wait. He said Lisa had spent days worrying over his plan and deserved time away. Theresa rarely took trips, and Mina would enjoy having both of them with her. Lisa still hesitated. Kenyon smiled and told her everything had already been arranged. "Go. Take a break. Let me handle things here." Lisa looked at the reservation again. 3 days and 2 nights away with Theresa and Mina. Kenyon had planned the entire trip himself. In the end, Lisa agreed. A few days later, Lisa left home with Theresa and Mina for the 3-day trip Kenyon had arranged. Kenyon helped load their bags into the car and kissed Mina before Lisa put her into the back seat. He told them to enjoy themselves and not rush home. During the trip, nothing about his behavior changed. He called to ask whether they had arrived safely. He spoke to Mina and asked if she was having fun. When Lisa sent him photos, he replied as he always did. He said work was keeping him busy and told her not to worry about him. The trip gave Lisa a chance to rest after the days she had spent thinking about the loan, and Theresa enjoyed being away from the house with Mina. For 3 days, Kenyon remained in contact with them. On the morning they were due to return, Lisa spoke to him again. He told her he had a busy day ahead and would see them when they got home. A few hours later, Lisa, Theresa, and Mina started the drive back. When they arrived home, nothing looked wrong from outside. Lisa carried the bags in while Mina ran ahead and Theresa followed behind with the rest of their things. The house was quiet, but Lisa assumed Kenyon was still at work. She took the luggage upstairs and began putting things away. That was when she noticed the empty space in the closet. At first, she thought Kenyon had moved a few things. Then she looked again. Most of his clothes were gone. Lisa opened the drawers. Empty. She went into the bathroom. His toothbrush, razor, and the other things he used every morning were no longer there. Lisa walked back into the bedroom and called his phone. No answer. She called again. Theresa came upstairs and found her standing beside the open closet. What happened? Lisa did not answer. She called Kenyon a third time and listened until the call ended. Then she began moving through the house. His shoes were gone. His work bag was gone. The personal things he had kept around the house had been taken with him. Nothing had been stolen. Nothing had been disturbed. Kenyon had simply removed himself from the home. Lisa returned downstairs and saw an envelope on the kitchen counter. Lisa opened the envelope. Inside was a letter from Kenyon. He wrote that he was sorry. He said he truly needed the money and had no other way to get it. He had left $10,000 for Lisa and Mina and hoped she would take good care of their daughter. He wished them luck. He told Lisa to live a happy life. She read the letter again. Then she looked at the money on the table. $10,000. Kenyon had persuaded her to borrow $300,000 against the house her parents had left her the money to buy. He had taken $290,000 and left the rest behind for his wife and 3-year-old daughter. And in the letter, he had told Lisa to take good care of Mina as if the child were now hers alone to raise. Lisa read the words again, and the last 3 days began to look different. Kenyon had arranged the trip. He had called it a gift. He had watched Lisa pack for herself and Mina. He had helped load the car. While Lisa, Theresa, and Mina were hours away from home, he had resigned from his job, removed everything he wanted from the house, and prepared to disappear. Even his calls during the trip had been part of those final days. He had asked whether Mina was having fun. On the morning they drove home, he had told Lisa he would see them there. By then, there was nothing left in the house that he planned to take with him. Lisa gripped the letter until the paper crushed in her hand. She had spent 3 days believing her husband had given her a vacation because he loved her. The trip had only given him enough time to leave. Lisa began to cry. Mina stood nearby, still waiting for her father to come home. Lisa could not bring herself to tell her that he was not coming back. The next morning, after another unanswered call to Kenyon, Lisa drove to the company where he worked. She still wanted to believe someone there would know where he was or how to reach him. Instead, the woman at the front desk told her Kenyon no longer worked there. Lisa thought she had misunderstood. What do you mean? The woman explained that Kenyon had already resigned. His departure had been arranged before Lisa ever left for the trip. Lisa stood there with the same question she had asked herself since finding the letter. Do you know where he went? No one did. She walked back to her car with nothing new to call, no workplace to return to, and no address where Kenyon could be found. The trip had not been a gift. Kenyon had needed the house empty. While Lisa, Theresa, and Mina were away, he had finished leaving his job, packed his belongings, taken the money, and disappeared. Lisa returned home and began going through everything she still had. Her salary from the dental office had always been enough for her share of the household expenses because Kenyon had been working too. Now his income was gone, and the business that was supposed to repay the new loan did not exist. The $10,000 he left behind could cover some immediate expenses, but it could not carry the house for long. Lisa still had utilities, insurance, food, transportation, and everything Mina needed. Theresa was still supposed to be paid. On top of all of it was the $300,000 loan secured by the home Lisa had celebrated paying off only days earlier. The next payment was coming, whether Kenyon came back or not. Lisa cut every expense she could and stopped spending money on anything that was not necessary. But the numbers did not change enough. Her salary could not support the household and carry the debt Kenyon had left behind. If Lisa failed to keep up with the loan, the house her parents had helped her buy could eventually be taken from her. A few days later, Lisa sat down with Theresa. Of all the expenses she had been trying to reduce, this was the conversation she had avoided the longest. Theresa had worked for Lisa's family for years. She had lost her husband when she was still young, never had children of her own, and had lived with Lisa's family since Lisa was a child. After Lisa's parents died, Theresa stayed with her. Years later, when Mina was born, she helped care for her too. But Lisa could no longer pretend she could continue paying her. I can't afford your salary anymore. Theresa said nothing. Lisa tried to keep going. You should find another family, someone who can pay you properly. I don't know how long this is going to last, and I can't ask you to stay here for free. Theresa looked at her. Are you asking me to leave? I'm telling you I can't pay you. That isn't what I asked. Lisa looked down. I don't want you to leave. Theresa reached across the table and placed her hand over Lisa's. Then I'm not leaving. Lisa shook her head. She told Theresa that she did not owe her anything. Another family could give her a salary, a stable home, and none of the problems Kenyon had left behind. Lisa could not even promise how long she would be able to keep the house. Theresa had every reason to go while she still had the choice. You've done enough for me, Lisa said. Theresa looked at the woman she had watched grow up, then toward the room where Mina was playing. I was here before you could pay me, Lisa. Lisa looked at her. And I'm not leaving because you can't pay me now. Lisa tried to argue again, but Theresa had already made her decision. She would stay in the house. She would help care for Mina. Whatever happened next, Lisa would not face it alone. At that time, Lisa still called her Theresa, but from that day forward, there was no salary keeping her there. Lisa gathered every document she could find and took them to a lawyer. She brought the loan papers, Kenyon's business plan, the letter he had left behind, and the information she had about the money. She explained how Kenyon had presented the investment, how long she had spent reviewing it, and how he had disappeared after the loan was completed. The lawyer went through the documents carefully. Lisa wanted to know whether the loan could be undone if she proved Kenyon had deceived her. The answer was not what she had hoped for. The signature on the loan documents was hers. She had been given time to review them, and she had agreed to use the house as security. The lender had approved the loan based on documents Lisa had signed voluntarily. Kenyon lying to his wife did not automatically erase the debt she owed to the lender. The lawyer explained that Kenyon's actions could still matter. The business plan, the timing of his resignation, the way he took the money and disappeared, and the letter he left behind all needed to be preserved. Lisa should keep every document, message, and record connected to what had happened. But even if Kenyon's conduct could later be challenged, that would not stop the loan payments coming due now. Lisa left the office knowing two things. She needed to keep every piece of evidence against Kenyon, and if she wanted to keep her home, she could not wait for someone to find him. Lisa began cutting the household expenses immediately. She canceled anything they did not need and stopped buying anything that could wait. Her salary paid for as much of the regular household costs as possible, while the $10,000 Kenyon had left covered the gaps she could not avoid. Theresa no longer accepted a salary, which helped more than Lisa wanted to admit. Even then, the money kept going down. Lisa checked the balance often enough to see exactly how quickly it was happening. Every grocery trip, utility bill, insurance payment, and unexpected expense took another piece of it. The loan was larger than anything her salary had ever been expected to carry. Lisa could make the household smaller. She could spend less. She could delay things she wanted. None of that changed the size of the debt. Before long, she understood that the $10,000 was not a solution. It was only buying her time. Lisa began taking every extra hour the dental office could give her. She stayed later when someone was needed, accepted additional shifts, and worked Saturdays when they were available. Theresa took care of Mina so Lisa could say yes whenever the office called. For a while, Lisa hoped the extra work might be enough to close the gap. It was not. The additional hours brought in more money, but not enough to change the situation. Lisa could work an entire extra Saturday and still watch most of what she earned disappear into expenses that had once been shared between two incomes. She could not keep adding hours forever, and the debt would not become smaller simply because she was more tired. One evening, Lisa came home after another long day and sat with Theresa in the kitchen. She had tried spending less. She had tried working more. Neither could produce the amount of money she needed. If Lisa was going to keep the house, she needed another source of income. That evening, Lisa and Theresa stayed at the kitchen table after Mina had finished eating. Lisa told Theresa she needed to find something she could do outside her hours at the dental office. She could not quit her job, and taking more shifts had already shown her how little difference a few extra hours would make. Whatever she tried had to fit around the work she already had. Theresa listened while preparing food for the next day. Lisa watched her move around the kitchen and began thinking about the one thing Theresa had done for most of her life. What if we sold food? Theresa turned to look at her. Lisa admitted she had no idea whether anyone would buy from them, but they already had the kitchen. Theresa knew how to cook. and Lisa could post the food online, take the orders, and make deliveries after work. They were not talking about opening a restaurant or building a company. Lisa only needed to earn enough extra money to stop relying on what remained of the $10,000. Teresa sat down with her, and the two women began discussing what they could make without buying expensive equipment or filling the kitchen with ingredients they might never use. By the end of the night, they had decided to try. Teresa chose loaded baked potatoes. She had made them for years and knew how to get the potatoes soft inside without ruining the skin, then fill them with meat, cheese, onions, and other toppings. Lisa liked the idea because the ingredients were affordable, the portions were filling, and the food could be packed for delivery without needing a complicated menu. They worked out the cost of each serving and set the price at $15.99. Lisa took photos, posted the potatoes online, and waited. For their first night, she and Teresa prepared enough ingredients for 10 orders. Only 3 came in. Lisa delivered them herself, then returned home to find most of what they had prepared still sitting in the kitchen. The next time they tried, the result was not much better. Some nights brought a few orders. Other nights brought almost none. The people who bought the potatoes did not complain, but most of them did not come back either. Lisa and Teresa had found a way to make extra money. They had not yet found a reason for customers to remember them. Lisa and Teresa continued selling in the evenings and on weekends. They did not prepare as much food as they had on the first night, but the number of orders still changed very little. Some days they sold 3 potatoes. On better days, they sold 5. There were also days when almost no one ordered at all. Lisa continued working at the dental office while Teresa stayed home with Mina and prepared the food. When orders came in, Lisa delivered them after work. A few customers ordered a second time, but not enough to make the business grow. The potatoes were bringing in some extra money, and Lisa needed every dollar they made, but after several weeks, she and Teresa were still selling to almost the same small number of people. If they continued doing exactly the same thing, there was no reason to expect the result to change. One evening, after another slow day, Lisa and Teresa sat down and ate the same potatoes they had been selling. They tasted the potatoes, the meat, the cheese, and the toppings one by one. Nothing was bad. That was the problem. Everything tasted the way a loaded baked potato was expected to taste. A customer could enjoy it and still have no reason to think about it again the next day. Lisa looked at Teresa. "We need something they can't get everywhere else." They began talking about a sauce made specifically for the potatoes. Teresa had made different sauces for meals over the years, and Lisa believed one of her recipes could become the part customers remembered. They were not trying to change the entire dish. They only needed one thing that belonged to them. Over the next several days, Lisa and Teresa began testing different versions of the sauce. Teresa adjusted the ingredients while Lisa tasted each version with the potatoes, meat, and cheese instead of judging the sauce on its own. Some versions were too heavy. Others covered the flavor of everything underneath them. One tasted good by itself but disappeared once it was added to the full potato. They changed the balance, tried again, and kept the versions that came closer to what they wanted. Eventually, they made a sauce that was good enough to sell. But when Lisa tasted it, she knew she would not remember it the next day. Teresa agreed. The sauce was close. It was still missing something. A few days later, Teresa was working on another batch of sauce while Mina played nearby. The 3-year-old had spent most of her life watching Teresa cook and often tried to copy whatever she saw. While Teresa turned away to work on something else, Mina reached for one of the cooking herbs nearby and dropped some into the sauce. Teresa noticed only after she turned back. "Mina, what did you put in there?" Mina pointed to the herb. Teresa knew it was safe to eat and often used in cooking, but it was not part of the sauce they had been making. She was about to set the batch aside when Lisa stopped her. "Wait, let's taste it first." Teresa looked at her, then prepared a potato with the meat, cheese, and toppings they normally used. She added some of the sauce. Lisa took the first bite. Teresa watched her face, then tasted it herself. Neither of them spoke right away. The flavor they had been trying to find was finally there. The next day, Lisa and Teresa tried to make the same sauce again. It did not taste the same. They knew what Mina had added, but they did not know how much she had used or exactly when it had gone into the batch. Their second attempt came closer. The third was still wrong. Teresa began changing the amount and the way the herb was added, while Lisa kept track of each version so they would know what had already been tried. They tested every batch with a complete loaded potato, making sure the sauce still worked with the meat, cheese, onions, and other toppings. After several attempts, they finally made a version that matched the flavor they remembered. Then they made it again. This time, the result was the same. Theresa had the cooking experience to refine it. Lisa had kept track of the changes, and Mina's small accident had given them the missing piece. They began serving the new sauce with the potatoes. The new sauce did not bring a flood of orders. The first changes were much smaller. A customer who had ordered once before came back. Another asked whether she could get extra sauce with her potato. Then someone placed a second order only a few days after the first. Lisa began seeing names she recognized. 3 orders became 5. On better evenings, 5 became 7 or 8. Before long, there were days when Lisa and Theresa were preparing 10 orders. It was still a small business run from their kitchen, and Lisa was still working at the dental office and making the deliveries herself. But the orders were no longer coming only from people trying the food for the first time. One evening, Lisa checked the next order on her phone and recognized the customer's name. She looked back through the previous orders. It was the 3rd time the same person had ordered from them. The returning customers changed the rhythm of the business. Lisa and Theresa were no longer spending an evening waiting to see whether 2 or 3 orders might come in. 5 orders became common. Then there were nights when 7 or 8 came in, and before long, 10 orders no longer felt unusual. The number was still small, but each order now created work that had to fit around the life Lisa already had. She left for the dental office in the morning while Theresa stayed home with Mina. During the day, Theresa prepared the potatoes, cooked the meat, cut the toppings, and made the sauce. Lisa checked incoming orders whenever she had a break and sent the details home so Theresa would know what needed to be ready. As soon as Lisa finished work, she drove home. By then, the kitchen was usually busy. Theresa had the potatoes coming out of the oven while Mina sat nearby with toys or followed her around the kitchen asking questions. Lisa changed out of her work clothes, checked the orders, helped add toppings, packed the boxes, and made sure each address matched the right order. Then she carried everything back outside and started delivering. At 5 orders, the work was manageable. At 8 or 10, a delivery route could take most of the evening. Lisa drove from one neighborhood to another, handed over the food, checked the next address, and continued until the car was empty. Some nights she returned home in time to eat with Theresa and Mina. Other nights, Mina was already asleep. The extra money began helping with the bills, and for the first time since Kenyon left, Lisa was no longer watching the remaining $10,000 disappear as quickly as before. But the business had not replaced her salary, and the loan still had to be paid. She could not leave the dental office. Theresa could not stop preparing the food, so the 2 women kept the same routine. One worked outside the house all day and delivered at night. The other cared for a 3-year-old while doing most of the cooking from the kitchen. They did not discuss how long they could continue that way. For the moment, the orders were growing, and they needed every one of them. One evening, Lisa finished a delivery route later than usual. There had only been 8 orders, but the addresses were spread farther apart than she expected. By the time she pulled into the driveway, she wanted nothing more than to take off her shoes, eat something, and go to bed. She gathered the empty delivery bags and the other things she had carried in the car, then walked inside. The lights were still on in the kitchen. Lisa expected Theresa to be finishing the last of the cleaning. Instead, she found her still working. Theresa had not heard the front door open. She stood with her back, partly turned, focused on preparing ingredients for the next day. The counters had already been wiped down in some places, but more work remained around her. A pot was still on the stove. Containers were lined up nearby. Theresa moved between them without noticing that Lisa had come home. Lisa did not say anything. She stood near the entrance to the kitchen and watched. Theresa had been awake before Lisa left for work that morning. She had taken care of Mina throughout the day, prepared every order, helped pack the food before Lisa left, and now, long after the last customer had received a delivery, she was still there. Sweat had gathered along Theresa's forehead from the heat of the kitchen. She wiped it away with the back of her arm and continued working. None of this was part of a job anymore. Lisa had stopped paying her months ago. Theresa could have left and found another family. Instead, she had stayed in the same house and taken on even more work than before. Lisa remained where she was, still holding the things she had brought in from the car. Theresa continued working, unaware that Lisa was watching her. After a while, Theresa turned and finally noticed Lisa standing there. Her face changed at once. She smiled. "Lisa, you're home. Are you tired? I made dinner for you." Lisa did not answer. She had heard almost the same words many years before. When she was a child, she would come home from school and find her mother waiting for her. Her mother would ask if she was tired, tell her there was food ready, and smile at her before Lisa had even put down her school bag. For years, Lisa had thought that part of her life was gone. Now she was standing in her own kitchen, looking at a woman who had spent the entire day caring for her daughter, cooking for the business, and still remembered to prepare dinner for her before she came home. Theresa's smile was the same kind of smile Lisa remembered waiting for her after school. The delivery bags and everything else Lisa was carrying fell to the floor. Theresa's smile disappeared. "Lisa?" Lisa began to cry. She crossed the kitchen and wrapped both arms around Theresa. The sudden movement caught Theresa by surprise. "What happened?" Lisa held on to her. "Mom!" Theresa stopped. Lisa pulled back just enough to look at her. "Will you be my mom for several seconds?" Theresa could only stare at her. Lisa was still crying when Theresa raised a hand to her face. "My child," she said. "I've thought of you as my daughter for a long time." Lisa hugged her again. Theresa held her in the middle of the kitchen where she had cared for Lisa, Mina, and the home long after there was no salary left to keep her there. From that night on, Lisa began calling Theresa Mom. Nothing else about their work became easier. The number of orders continued to rise, and before long, 10 orders became 15. Then one evening, 20 came in. At first, Lisa and Theresa were excited. 20 orders meant more money than they had ever made in a single night. But by the time the last box was packed, Lisa could already see the problem. 20 customers did not live in 20 houses lined up on the same street. The addresses were spread across different neighborhoods, and Lisa still had to deliver every order herself. She loaded the car and started with the customers whose food had been ready first. By the time she reached the later addresses, some of the boxes had been sitting much longer than she wanted. On another busy night, Lisa finished one side of the delivery area only to realize that her last 2 orders were in the opposite direction. She spent more time driving than handing food to customers. The business was making more money, but Lisa was losing hours behind the wheel. Theresa had a different problem at home. 15 or 20 orders meant more potatoes to prepare, more meat to cook, more toppings to portion, and more sauce to make, all while Mina still needed to be fed, bathed, and looked after. Lisa began helping as soon as she returned from the dental office, but on the busiest evenings, the 2 women were still packing boxes when some customers were already expecting their food. One night, Lisa returned from the last delivery and found Theresa sitting at the kitchen table. Mina had fallen asleep beside her. Lisa looked at the time. It was much later than either of them had realized. "We can't keep doing this." Theresa looked at the stack of containers waiting to be washed. "We wanted more orders." "I know." Lisa sat down across from her. "But if we get any more, I won't even be here to help you. I'll spend the whole night in the car." The problem was no longer how to find customers. They now had more work than the 2 of them could handle with the hours they had. Lisa did not quit the dental office. The business was growing, but she had spent months learning what happened when a family depended on money that could disappear. She was not willing to give up a steady paycheck because of a few good weeks. Instead, she asked to reduce her schedule. The decision still cost her part of the income she knew she could count on, but it gave her several full days each week to work on the business. Lisa began working at the dental office 3 days a week. On the other days, she stayed home with Theresa. For the first time, she could see how much work had been happening before she arrived each evening. She helped buy ingredients, checked how much they were spending on each order, answered customers, organized the deliveries, and worked beside Theresa in the kitchen. Theresa no longer had to prepare everything alone while caring for Mina. Lisa also stopped accepting orders without looking at where they had to go. She grouped deliveries that were close to one another and gave customers clearer time windows instead of driving back and forth across the city every time a new order appeared. The change did not solve every problem, but it allowed them to handle more orders without making every evening longer than the one before it. On the days Lisa still worked at the dental office, the old routine continued. She came home, changed clothes, helped pack the food, loaded the car, and drove until the last order was delivered. On her days away from the office, she worked with Theresa from the beginning and could leave with the deliveries already arranged in a route that made sense. The money became more consistent. Some weeks were still better than others, But the business was no longer surviving on 2 or 3 strangers deciding to try a potato. Customers returned. Some ordered every week. Others began buying several portions at once for people at work or family at home. Lisa was still far from being able to leave her job, and she was still responsible for the debt against the house. But for the first time, she had changed her work schedule because something she and Theresa built needed more of her time. One afternoon, Lisa left the dental office and went straight home to help Theresa finish the orders for that evening. By the time she loaded the car, she had already spent a full day at work. The delivery route took her through several neighborhoods, and she was halfway through it when her phone received a message from Jada, an old friend who lived near the coast. Lisa did not open it until she had parked outside the next delivery address. The first message was a question. "You and Kenyon got divorced or something?" Lisa stared at the screen. Before she could reply, another message arrived. It was a photograph. Kenyon was sitting near the beach with a woman Lisa had never seen before. The two of them were close enough that Lisa did not need Jada to explain why she had sent it. Jada wrote that she had recognized Kenyon and wanted to know whether Lisa already knew. Lisa enlarged the photograph. 4 years had not passed yet. Kenyon had not returned $1. He had not called to ask about Mina. He had left Lisa with a $300,000 debt secured by her home, and while she was working at the dental office during the day and delivering potatoes at night, he was sitting beside another woman near the ocean. Lisa looked at the picture for a while. Months earlier, the sight of Kenyon with someone else might have broken something in her. Now she felt no need to call him. She did not ask Jada to follow him. She did not send the photograph to the woman or demand an explanation from a man who had already explained himself through everything he had done. Lisa saved the photograph with the other records she had kept since Kenyon left. Then she put the phone down, picked up the next order, and carried it to the customer's door. Reducing her hours at the dental office gave Lisa more time to work with Theresa, but it also allowed them to accept more orders. 20 orders became 30. On their busiest days, 30 became 40. Lisa organized the addresses before leaving and stopped wasting as much time driving back and forth. But the more the business grew, the more obvious the next problem became. Every hour Lisa spent in the car was an hour she was not helping Theresa prepare food, checking new orders, buying ingredients, or handling the other work that had begun piling up behind the kitchen. Some afternoons, Lisa left with the first group of deliveries while Theresa was still preparing the next. By the time Lisa returned, more orders were waiting and another route had to be planned. She would carry the new boxes to the car and leave again. There were evenings when Lisa knew more about the roads she had driven than what had happened inside her own kitchen. Theresa was still doing most of the cooking, but the business now required someone to watch everything around the food as well. They needed to know which ingredients were running low, whether customers had paid, which orders had changed, and when each group of deliveries needed to leave. Lisa could not manage those things while driving from one house to another. One evening, she returned from a long route and found several messages waiting on her phone. One customer wanted to change an order. Another had asked about ordering for a group the following week. Theresa had also written down ingredients they needed before the next day. Lisa sat at the kitchen table and began answering everything after most of the work should have been finished. "I'm spending half my time delivering," she said. Theresa was putting away the last containers. "Then stop." Lisa looked at her. Theresa repeated it. "You don't need to do everything yourself." Lisa had resisted paying anyone for work she could do because every dollar that left the business was a dollar that could not go toward the house. But the deliveries were now preventing her from doing work only she could handle. They hired one part-time driver. At first, Lisa gave him only the busiest routes and continued making some deliveries herself. Within a few weeks, she was sending more of the orders out with him and staying behind. For the first time since the business began, Lisa could remain in the kitchen while the food left without her. She answered customers, checked the next orders, helped Theresa, and prepared the work for the following day before midnight. Hiring someone cost money. It also gave Lisa back the hours she had been losing on the road. The business continued growing. With Lisa spending less time in the car, the business began operating differently. She could see problems before they became emergencies. She knew how much meat they were using each week, which toppings customers ordered most often, and how many potatoes Theresa could realistically prepare in a day. She began buying larger quantities of the ingredients they used constantly instead of making repeated trips to the store. She kept better records of what came in and what went out. The driver handled most deliveries, And when the number of orders became too much for one person, Lisa brought in another part-time driver during the busiest hours. The number of orders continued to rise. There were days when Lisa and Theresa prepared 50 portions. Then there were days when they reached 60 or 70. The money was no longer coming from a handful of customers. They had people who ordered every week, families who bought several portions at a time, and small groups at workplaces that placed larger orders together. Lisa began comparing what she earned from 3 days at the dental office with what those same 3 days could mean for the business. On the days she worked away from home, Theresa still carried most of the preparation until Lisa returned. Questions waited for her. Orders had to be arranged around her schedule. Problems that could have been handled in the morning were sometimes left until evening. Lisa knew leaving the dental office meant giving up the only income she could predict exactly. 4 years earlier, she might have trusted a plan on paper. She no longer made decisions that way. For months, she watched the orders, the costs, the repeat customers, and the amount of money the business kept after expenses. She calculated what they could afford if sales fell. She did not leave because of one busy week. She waited until the business had shown her, month after month, that the customers were still there. Then Lisa gave notice at the dental office. On her final day, she finished her shift, left the building, and drove home. The next morning, she did not put on her work clothes or leave for someone else's business. She walked into the kitchen with Theresa and began working there full-time. The change was immediate. Lisa could receive ingredients in the morning, answer customers during the day, organize the drivers before the food was ready, and help Theresa during the busiest hours. They could accept orders that had previously been impossible because Lisa was at work. 70 orders no longer had to be forced into the few hours she had left after a shift. For the first time, the business had all of Lisa's time. More time solved one problem and exposed another. The house had never been built to operate as a food business. The kitchen was large, which was one reason Lisa and Theresa had managed for as long as they did. But the business had grown far beyond the first 10 potatoes they once prepared for 3 customers. Bags of potatoes were arriving in larger quantities. Meat, cheese, toppings, and containers needed places to be stored. The refrigerator that once held food for a family was now competing with ingredients for dozens of orders. Boxes of packaging occupied spaces that had once been empty. Lisa bought additional storage, but each new solution only delayed the same problem. Theresa and the person they had begun bringing in to help with basic preparation could no longer work comfortably without getting in each other's way. Mina, now older, understood that she could not run through the kitchen while they were working, but the business had taken over so much of the house that Lisa began seeing how little space remained for the family who lived there. One morning, a larger number of orders came in for the same day. Lisa checked the ingredients, the refrigerator, the available counter space, and the work already waiting for Theresa. They had customers willing to pay them, drivers ready to deliver the food, and not enough room to prepare it. Lisa stopped accepting orders for the day. It was the first time she had turned away customers, not because they lacked time or workers, but because the house itself could not hold any more work. That evening, after the kitchen had been cleaned, Lisa and Theresa sat at the table where the business had first been discussed. They had once worried about preparing food that no one would buy. Now they were refusing orders because they had nowhere to make them. Lisa began looking for a commercial kitchen they could rent. She was not ready to open a restaurant. She did not need tables, a dining room, or an expensive storefront. She needed more refrigerators, more workspace, and a kitchen that could handle what the business had already become. When they found a suitable place, Lisa signed a rental agreement. Theresa packed the equipment and ingredients they needed. The business that had started in their home was finally moving out of it. Moving into the commercial kitchen changed how much Lisa and Theresa could produce, but it also changed the way they had to work. In the house, Theresa had been able to reach for almost everything herself. Now there were more refrigerators, more worktables, larger quantities of ingredients, and several people moving through the same kitchen. Lisa hired another kitchen worker and divided the preparation into simpler tasks. Potatoes could be cleaned and prepared in larger batches. Meat and toppings could be portioned before the busiest hours. The drivers no longer had to wait in the kitchen while Lisa finished checking addresses. Orders were grouped before the food was ready, then handed out in batches as each route left. Theresa remained responsible for the part Lisa refused to let growth change. She checked the food, trained the workers, and kept control of the sauce. The recipe was never written where everyone could see it, and no one person outside the family handled every part of the process. Lisa did not expect Theresa to make every batch forever, but she wanted the flavor that had brought customers back in the first place to remain the same. The first weeks in the new kitchen were not perfect. They prepared too much of one topping and ran short of another. A driver arrived late on a day when several orders were waiting. Lisa accepted more orders than the kitchen could finish at the time she had promised. Each mistake forced her to change something. She began limiting how many orders could be accepted for the same delivery window. She tracked which ingredients disappeared fastest on different days of the week. Theresa showed the workers how to prepare the food the same way, even when the kitchen was busy. The business became less dependent on the two women doing every task themselves. Then, one day, the order count reached 100. Lisa checked the number again before showing Theresa. For a few seconds, both women simply looked at it. They remembered the first night when they had prepared for 10 customers and only 3 had ordered. There was no time to celebrate. The kitchen was already working. Lisa went back to organizing the deliveries, and Theresa returned to the food. 100 orders soon stopped being a single unusual day. It happened again, then more often. As the number of customers grew, Lisa began receiving the same question in messages and calls. People wanted to know where they could come and pick up the food themselves. Some lived close enough that they did not want to wait for a driver. Others wanted to order on the way home from work. The commercial kitchen had given Lisa space to produce more food, but it was never meant to be the place customers knew. For the first time, Lisa and Theresa began discussing a location of their own. Lisa did not look for a large restaurant. She had spent too long paying for one risky decision to take on expenses the business did not need. She wanted a small location with enough room for a kitchen, a counter for orders and pickup, and a few places for customers who wanted to eat there. Delivery would remain part of the business. The new location only needed to make it easier for customers to reach them. Lisa compared the rent with what the business had been earning and waited until she found a place they could afford without depending on sales they had not made yet. When she finally signed the lease, there was still another decision to make. The business had never needed an official name when Lisa was posting potatoes online and delivering them herself. Now a name had to go above the door. Lisa already knew what she wanted. Theresa's Home Potato. Theresa looked at her. My name? Yes. Lisa, this is your business too. I know. Theresa shook her head. She reminded Lisa, who had carried the orders from one neighborhood to another after working all day at the dental office. Lisa had been the one answering customers, watching the costs, hiring the drivers, and making every decision that allowed the business to grow. Theresa had cooked. That was how she saw it. Lisa saw something else. Do you remember the day I told you I couldn't pay you anymore? Theresa stopped. Lisa did not need to remind her what had happened after that. Theresa could have left. She could have found another family, taken another salary, and walked away from the debt and the problems Kenyon had left behind. Instead, she had stayed. Later, when Lisa needed another source of income, it was Theresa's cooking that gave them the first thing they could sell. If you had walked out that day, there would be no business for me to put my name on now. Theresa looked at her for a while. Lisa continued. I may have delivered the food. I may have handled the orders. But this started with you, Mom. Theresa told her again that they had built it together. Lisa did not disagree. Then let me choose the name. Theresa knew there was no point arguing anymore. Lisa smiled. I want your name on it, Mom. Theresa stopped trying to change her mind. The first Theresa's Home Potato opened with a small staff. Customers could order at the counter, pick up food they had ordered ahead, or have it delivered as before. Lisa spent the first weeks moving constantly between the kitchen, the counter, the drivers, and the numbers behind the business. Theresa trained the kitchen staff and checked the food before it went out. Neither woman could disappear from the operation yet, but they were no longer trying to cook, pack, answer customers, and deliver everything with their own hands. The first location gave customers a place they could return to. People who had once ordered from a phone now brought friends with them. Workers picked up food after their shifts. Families ordered several portions to take home. The name Lisa had chosen began appearing on bags, boxes, receipts, and above the door. Every time Theresa saw it, she still acted as though Lisa had made too much of her. Lisa never offered to change it. Lisa did not open a second location simply because the first one was busy. She waited. For months, she paid attention to who was buying, when they came, and what they ordered. Younger customers often changed toppings and added extra sauce. Office workers placed several orders together around lunch. People coming home from work bought food in the late afternoon and evening because they wanted something filling without spending time cooking. Families were more likely to order several portions at once. Lisa and Theresa talked about those patterns when they discussed where another location might work. They did not need another place that depended on exactly the same customers as the first. They needed to be closer to people who were already showing them how the food fit into their lives. The second location was chosen with that in mind. It was smaller than the first and built mostly around pickup and delivery. Lisa did not copy every decision from the original store. The hours matched the customers in that area. Staffing was adjusted to the busiest periods instead of keeping the same number of workers all day. When the second location became stable, Lisa used what she had learned before, considering another one. The process repeated, but it became faster each time because she was no longer learning everything from the beginning. One location became two. Then another small location opened in an area where people working nearby had already been ordering through delivery. Each new place had its own workers, drivers, and daily problems, but the food followed the same standards Theresa had built in the first kitchen. Lisa stopped spending her days packing boxes. She hired people to manage the work that once depended on her being present every hour. Her job changed. She reviewed sales, staffing, costs, customer patterns, and the performance of each location. When one place became slower, she wanted to know why. When another became too busy during certain hours, she added workers where they were needed instead of expecting the same team to do more forever. Theresa's role changed too. She no longer stood over a hot kitchen from morning until night. She trained the people responsible for the food and checked that the taste remained the same across the locations. Mina grew up watching the business grow with her. She was no longer the 3-year-old playing beside Theresa while a few potatoes were prepared in the family kitchen. Over the next several years, the combined orders from all the locations continued to rise. There were days when the entire business sold hundreds of potatoes. Eventually, across the different locations, the total passed 1,000 orders in a single day. By then, Lisa no longer knew every customer's address. She no longer drove the deliveries or answered every message herself. The business could continue operating when she went home. 4 years after Kenyon left, the woman he had abandoned with a $300,000 debt was running a company that no longer depended on her doing every job inside it. 4 years after Kenyon disappeared, Lisa sat at the same kitchen table where she had once made the last payment on the house. The room around her looked different now. There were no stacks of containers waiting to be packed, no bags of potatoes taking over the storage space, and no drivers coming to the door for another delivery. The business had outgrown the house long ago. Theresa's Home Potato now had several locations. Employees handled the daily work, and Lisa spent most of her time managing the company instead of making or delivering the food herself. But the debt Kenyon left behind had remained with her through every stage of that growth. When Lisa and Theresa were selling 3 potatoes, it was there. When Lisa was working at the dental office during the day and driving through neighborhoods at night, it was there. When the first driver was hired, when they moved into the commercial kitchen, and when the first Theresa's Home Potato opened, Lisa had continued paying it. As the business earned more, she increased the amount she put toward the debt. She kept enough money for the company to operate safely, paid her employees, covered the costs of each location, and used part of what remained to reduce the balance faster. She did not empty the business every time a good month came. She had learned too much about what happened when a decision was built on money that had not yet been earned. The balance fell slowly at first. Then, as the business grew, it began falling faster. Now only one payment remained. Lisa checked the amount on the screen. She entered it, reviewed the number, and submitted the payment. The page took a few seconds to update. Then the balance appeared, $0. Lisa sat without moving. 4 years earlier, she had looked at the same number and believed the house was finally safe. Only days later, she had trusted Kenyon enough to put $300,000 back against it. This time, no one had promised her the debt would be repaid. No one had handed her a plan and asked her to believe in it. Lisa had paid it with the business that began in this kitchen, with the food Theresa had made, with the deliveries she had once carried to customers herself, and with 4 years of decisions made one problem at a time. Theresa came into the kitchen and saw Lisa staring at the laptop. "What is it?" Lisa turned the screen toward her. Theresa looked at the number. She covered her mouth. Lisa smiled. "It's done, Mom." Theresa came around the table and pulled her into her arms. Mina, now 7, heard them and came into the kitchen asking what had happened. Lisa reached for her daughter and pulled her into the hug. The three of them stood together beside the same table where Lisa had once told Kenyon they had finally paid off the house. On the laptop behind them, the balance remained at 0. During the 4 years after he left, Kenyon built another life somewhere else. He found work in another city and stayed with the woman Lisa later saw in Jada's photograph. The $290,000 he had taken did not last forever. Some of it was spent. Some disappeared through decisions that never produced what Kenyon expected. 4 years later, what remained was running out. By the time he began hearing about Lisa again, the life he had left behind no longer looked the way he remembered it. Theresa's home potato had grown beyond one small location. The name appeared in different parts of the area, and Lisa was no longer working at a dental office or delivering food from the back of her car. She was running the business. Kenyon began looking for more information. He found photographs of the locations and saw Lisa's name connected to the company. He learned that she still lived in the same house. He did not know every detail of her finances, but he knew enough to understand that the woman he had left with a $300,000 debt had built something valuable. 4 years after disappearing, Kenyon returned to Greensboro. Lisa was at home when the doorbell rang. She was not expecting anyone. When she opened the door, Kenyon was standing on the other side. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. He looked older than he had when he left, but Lisa recognized the expression he had prepared before he said a word. "Lisa." She did not answer. Kenyon told her he knew he had no right to appear at the house after so long. He said he had thought about coming back many times, but had been ashamed of what he had done. Lisa remained in the doorway. Then Kenyon asked about Mina. "I just want to see my daughter." Mina heard voices and came closer. She was 7 now. The last time Kenyon had seen her, she had been 3 years old. He looked at her and smiled. "Mina." He moved as though he expected her to come to him. She did not. Mina stayed where she was, looking at a man she knew mostly from old photographs and the few memories she still had from early childhood. Kenyon tried to keep smiling. "Look how big you are." Mina moved closer to Lisa instead. Kenyon looked back at his wife. His eyes filled as he told her he had missed both of them. Lisa stepped aside and let him enter. Kenyon walked back into the house he had left 4 years earlier. Kenyon sat in the living room and began telling Lisa the story he had come back to tell. He said the money had not been taken so he could abandon his family. He had used it for an investment. Things had gone wrong, and by the time he understood how much he had lost, he had been too ashamed to return. He said each month that passed made coming home harder. Lisa listened without interrupting. Kenyon told her he still had some of the money left. He was ready to give it back. "I'll get a job. I'll give you everything I have left. We can fix this," Lisa continued listening. Kenyon leaned forward. "I know I can't undo what I did, but I can help pay back the loan. We can save the house." He did not know the balance had already reached 0. He spoke as though Lisa had spent 4 years waiting for him to return and finish what he had left behind. Then he began talking about Mina. He said their daughter deserved to have her father back. He said he wanted to make up for the birthdays he had missed and the years he had lost. Finally, Kenyon moved from the chair and lowered himself in front of Lisa. "Please, Lisa, I know I was wrong. Just give me one more chance. I promise I'll make it up to you and our daughter." Lisa looked at the man kneeling in front of her. 4 years earlier, she had trusted him enough to put her home behind a $300,000 loan. Now, as he asked her to trust him again, she felt nothing that made her want to. Lisa let Kenyon finish. She waited until he had said everything about the failed investment, the money he claimed to have left, and the family he wanted back. Then she picked up her phone. "Was she part of the investment too?" Kenyon looked at her. "Who?" Lisa opened the photograph she had saved years earlier. She turned the screen toward him. Kenyon looked down and saw himself sitting near the beach with the woman he had lived with after leaving Greensboro. He said nothing. Lisa watched his face. "Jada took that while I was still working at the dental office." Kenyon looked up. "Lisa, I can explain." "You just did." He reached for the phone, but Lisa pulled it back. Kenyon began talking again. He said the woman had not been the reason he left. He said they became involved later, after he was already gone and had no idea how to return home. Lisa asked when the photograph had been taken. Kenyon stopped. The date was still attached to the image. Lisa had been working during the day, helping Theresa prepare orders after work and driving from one customer's house to another at night. Kenyon had been near the ocean with another woman. "You didn't leave because an investment failed," Lisa said. "You quit your job before I came home. You packed your things while we were away. You took the money and left." Kenyon told her he had been scared. Lisa did not argue with him about what he had felt. She already knew what he had done. Kenyon tried to return to the money. He reminded her that he was willing to give back what remained. Lisa looked at him. "The loan is paid off." Kenyon stared at her. "What? Every dollar?" For the first time since entering the house, Kenyon had nothing prepared to say. His eyes moved around the room as though the house itself had changed in front of him. Lisa had not needed him to come back. She had not spent 4 years waiting for the money he claimed to have saved. The debt was gone before he ever rang the doorbell. Kenyon stood up. The tears and apologies that had brought him to his knees disappeared from his face. He asked how Lisa had paid off $300,000. She did not answer. He already knew about Theresa's home potato. That was why he had come back. Kenyon began talking about the business. He said Lisa had built it while they were still legally married. He reminded her that the house had been their family home and that he had spent years helping pay for it before he left. The man who had returned promising to give Lisa everything he had was now asking what belonged to him. Lisa listened until he finished. Then she went to a drawer and took out the file she had kept for 4 years. Inside were the business plan Kenyon had used to persuade her, the letter he had left behind, records connected to the loan and the money, information about the timing of his resignation, and the other documents her lawyer had told her to preserve. Lisa placed the file on the table. Kenyon looked at it. Lisa told him she had spoken to a lawyer after he disappeared and had continued getting legal advice as the years passed. She had kept records of what happened and of the business she and Theresa built after he left. If Kenyon wanted to challenge the house, the company, or the end of their marriage, Lisa was prepared to let the entire history of the $300,000 become part of the legal fight. Kenyon said she could not threaten him. "I'm not threatening you," Lisa said. "You can fight me if you want." She opened the file. "But then we go through all of it." Kenyon looked down at the documents. Lisa did not tell him she could send him to prison. That decision was not hers to make. But Kenyon understood what he had spent 4 years avoiding. A dispute would not begin with the successful business he had returned to claim. It would also bring attention back to the plan he had prepared, the money he had taken, the job he had left, the trip he had arranged to get Lisa out of the house, and the letter he had written before disappearing. Kenyon's voice changed again. He told Lisa there was no reason to destroy each other. He said they could work something out. Lisa told him she already had. Lisa took another set of documents from the file and placed them in front of Kenyon. Her lawyer had prepared them for the day. Kenyon was finally found or chose to return, and Lisa had already signed where she had been instructed to sign. Kenyon looked through the papers and realized Lisa had not been waiting for him to decide whether their marriage was over. She had prepared for this long before he came back. The documents set out the terms under which Kenyon would agree to end the marriage without trying to reach for the home or the business Lisa had built during the years he was gone. Kenyon looked at her. "You knew I would come back?" "No." Lisa looked at the papers. "I knew what I would do if you did." Kenyon refused at first. He said 4 years could not erase everything they had been. He reminded her of the years before he left, the house they had lived in, and the daughter they shared. When Lisa did not change her mind, he began pleading again. He dropped to his knees and asked her to think about what she was doing. Lisa looked down at him. The man in front of her was the same man who had once convinced her to risk her home because she believed in him. But whatever had remained between them had ended long before this day. "Sign it, Kenyon." He stayed on the floor for a while longer. Then he stood, returned to the table, and picked up the pen. Lisa watched him sign. Her lawyer would handle what came next, but Kenyon had agreed not to fight her for the house or the business. When it was done, Kenyon put the pen down and walked toward the door. Mina was standing near Theresa. Kenyon stopped when he saw her. For the last time, he opened his arms. "Mina, can I at least have a hug?" Mina looked at him. Then she moved behind Theresa and wrapped both arms around her legs. Theresa rested a hand on the child's shoulder. Kenyon stood there for another second. Lisa did not tell Mina to go to him. Theresa did not say anything. Kenyon lowered his arms, opened the door, and left. Mina stayed beside Theresa. Lisa stood with them as the door closed behind him. 4 years earlier, Lisa had believed she was losing everything. She had lost the husband she trusted, the safety of her home, and the future she thought she had built for her daughter. But it was only when she found herself at the lowest point of her life that she began to see what had been beside her all along. A woman who had lost her own mother found a new one. A woman who had never had children found a daughter and a granddaughter. And a little girl whose father walked away grew up with a grandmother who never did. Lisa had spent 4 years fighting her way out of the debt Kenyon left behind. But the most valuable thing she found was never the money, the house, or the business. It was the family that stayed when there was nothing left to gain. If Lisa and Theresa's story touched you, like this video and share it with someone who may need it today. And follow for more stories about women who found a way to rebuild their lives.